Hello everyone, I'm Father Aaron. Welcome to The Dungeon Minister! So, okay, the characters have been on their way to the Shire for, 3-4 episodes now? Okay, we'll get there. We're getting there. We're there. Having captured, in the last episode, one of the bandits and one of the children, the PCs have now handed their prisoners over to a sheriff of the Shire. That sheriff takes over the prisoners and brings them to Clunevodage. Takes them to George Clooney. Clunevodage, which is the largest town in the Shire. It is also the most southerly, and it is the town through which trade flows in and out of the Shire. The PCs, and I should probably just take a moment to refresh everyone on who these characters are. We have Fleetwood and Bob Johnny, who are third-level elves, and keep in mind, in BECMI, there's no race-class separation, so an elf is an elf is an elf. We also have Fofire the Thief, and the character who brought us to the Shire, who wanted to see home again, who wanted to visit relatives, Touchberry the Halfling. At this point, Touchberry is 4th level, and Fofire is 5th level. Now, the adventure I'm telling you about today actually took 2 sessions to play out. The first session was pure role-playing. We had no combat, we didn't roll a dice for anything. It was just exploring the Shire. I gave the characters maps of the towns, and they explored where they wanted to go. And I let Touchberry know this area is where there's some shops, this area is where there's, maybe this is kind of a rough area of town, that kind of thing. Do halflings have rough areas of town? I mean, is it... Anyhow, they explored. Pure, open exploration, and I just, improvised things on the fly as they went into different shops, as they visited different people. I just came up with stuff. And my middle boy, who plays Touchberry, was creating half of this stuff. Oh, I want to visit my old friend so-and-so. And okay, we went and visited your old friend so-and-so. So, pure role-playing. One of the highlights was when they would go to a pub and everyone else would have to watch their heads as Touchberry just scooted right in. Actually, here in Clunevodage, it wasn't as bad because this is a hub of trade between the Shire and humans, mostly humans. And so they're used to having humans here, and their pubs are a little higher ceilinged. However, Touchberry wanted to visit his hometown. He wanted to see his parents. And his hometown is Athenry, which is the seat of the Shire, where the sheriff for the entire Shire lives. I basically cobbled together that in the Shire, there are sheriffs which control various areas. There are some country sheriffs, there are town sheriffs who are in charge of the towns, but then there's one sheriff who's over all. That one is going to be all, and it's an elected position. They serve for, I think it was 5 years we decided on, and we sort of worked this out with the players too. And so there's a rotating leadership, and different ones stand at different times and run the place. No one can have consecutive terms. As one of the rules in the Shire, you can't have back-to-back terms, so nobody gets this long stretch in power. Anyway, yeah, I know, Shire politics. Fascinating. At any rate, they decided they wanted to go up to Athenry to visit not only the seat of the Shire and to see more of the Shire, but really to see Touchberry's parents. So up they go. Along the way, for whatever reason, Touchberry decided to start rolling a snowball. It's been snowing recently, right, in our world. It's been snowing recently in the real world, too, but that's coincidental. Anyhow, and so for whatever reason, Touchberry decided to start making a snowball, and he's pushing the snowball along in front of him. I don't know why. It was way too big to move long before they reached Athenry, so they left it at the side of the road to confuse somebody. Mostly me. Into Athenry the characters went. Now, it's a very small town, built on a small river, really little more than a stream. It features, like all of the halfling towns, a beautiful little town square, in the center of which there is a statue of the founding hero of the halflings. And I'll admit, I just called him Samwise Gamgee. Why not? It is, as I said, also where Touchberry's family lives. Now, Touchberry's father has a small woodworking shop on the river. This is it here. And the first thing they did was visit Touchberry's father. They found him in the shop, a thin halfling as far as halflings go, and overjoyed, of course, to see his son. He welcomed his friends in, offered them, hospitality, a drink of tea, because he'd had a little cup of tea while he was working, so he offered tea all round, apologized for the low ceiling, but what are you going to do? And they started to catch up. Touchberry's father is the first to intimate that not all is well in the Shire. First of all, there are the Bandits, which, of course, the characters know about and can report that there's been some movement on. They still haven't caught the other bandits and the other children, incidentally. But the bandits have been troubling trade in the south. But even up here, there's been trouble. Some halflings have been attacked a few nights previous, attacked while traveling between villages at night. They were attacked, beaten, left for dead. They weren't dead, however, and once they came to and recovered, they ran to report what had happened. Unfortunately, in the dark, and surprised from behind, they couldn't say who had attacked them. They knew they were rough, they knew they smelled bad, and they knew they spoke a language that the halflings didn't recognize. Other than that, no idea. This is the latest in a series of events which have troubled the northern half of the Shire, specifically near the village of Kilskay, which I'm sure I'm also mispronouncing. Anyhow, near the village of Kilskay there had been trouble. Again, attacks, things stolen, things vandalized, stuff that just doesn't happen in the Shire. However, none of this has affected directly Touchberry's family, or even Athenry, or any of the major towns. It's been out in the countryside, and small villages have seen some trouble. And so they're worried, but they're not terribly frightened right now. After visiting with his father for a while, Touchberry takes his friends across the river and up to a hill which overlooks the town in which their home is. My boy wanted to have a hobbit hole, essentially. There they meet Touchberry's mother, who is as big around as his father is slim. And she welcomes them as, I think Mrs. Fezziwig is described, as one substantial smile. She just loves her son and welcomes him in and, of course, offers them food. Just endless food. She also talks about the gossip, and she's heard something that her husband hasn't. It has just been reported that more halflings were attacked on the road at night, and these ones saw their attacker. This time, unfortunately, a halfling was killed. The rest of the group escaped, and they report there are goblins in the Shire. Goblins? What are goblins doing this far south? There haven't been goblins down in this area since the Great Goblin War 200 years ago. What is going on? Well, these are the times we live in, and so, it's like that around here. Do you want some more mashed potatoes? Oh, it's getting bad out there now. Son, the soul can't walk between villages without having an armed guard with him. Have some bacon. Go ahead, have the bacon. It's real good. This is the kind of talk going around the table. The Shire's starting to get nervous. People up here, especially in the north, are on edge. When Touchberry's father comes home for dinner, he has heard the most recent news of the fresh attack. He's also heard more. Sheriff Luton, this is the head sheriff of the entire Shire, she is raising the Shire. The halflings are going to war. Of course, my players want to get involved. They volunteer to join in the fight. The fact that Touchberry is known, that his family's well respected, helps sort of grease the wheels on this one. Because it's dangerous times. There's bandits out there, there's lizardmen, there's goblins. Are we going to trust these strangers? Are we going to let them in on our military plans and all that kind of stuff? But Touchberry's reputation, and his family's reputation mostly, helps him overcome that, and they trust these strangers. In fact, they end up having a special mission for them. Athenry, incidentally, is where the sheriff's house is located. It's the large sort of H-shaped building on the map right there. The day after the news of the raising of the Shire, There are messengers going in and out of that house all day long, and the whole town is abuzz. Halflings can be seen going to and fro armed. Some of those are militia. They are gathering the militia. Some of them are just everyday citizens, craftsmen, farmers, etc., who've decided enough is enough. I'm carrying a weapon with me. Now, a lot of times that's a cudgel, a club, right? A walking stick with a big hefty end on it. Sometimes it's a sword, if there's one in the family, or a big knife or something, maybe an axe, a pitchfork, whatever. But they're going about armed. That evening, the halflings from the south show up. They march into town and they go to the town square, where they are joined by the militia from Athenry and the surrounding areas. It's a sort of a pep rally, and it's also to break them into smaller units. Okay, you're going to go with this sheriff over here, you're under his command. Okay, you lot go with him, you're going to be under his command, just to make sure that they're organized, right? Before they head out, they're going to leave the following morning. This is also when the characters meet Sheriff Luton and all the other sheriffs and leaders of the company, and we do a little role play around that. Thank you for joining, thank you for volunteering to help us, and all that. The following morning, they set out. They march north to Kilskea, and on the way they gather more troops as militias at various villages, etc. join up. And we're talking about 5 or 6 at a time. By the time they get to Kilskea, and the Kilskea militia joins as well, they are at a grand total of 54. This is the Shire, and so the army is small. No, that's not what I mean. I mean, there's not many of them. They've left some of their militia in other places, right? They don't want to leave anything else undefended. They don't know where the goblins are precisely, and although they are pretty sure they're here in the north, if they've slipped past them in the night and gone the other way, they don't want them ravaging around in the Southland while it's entirely undefended. So they've left some down there, but they're also just not a warlike people. They don't have a huge army, at least not a huge standing army. But joining with the Kilskea militia, they do have 54. They also have news. The goblins have been spotted. They have been spotted camping in the hills just to the east of the Shire, where the Shire sort of melts off into the hills. They're camping under those hills, and they have pickets set, watchmen set out at a distance, so that they can't be surprised while they rest during the day, right? And so they're in the sort of lee of the hills, in the shadows of the hills, finding what shade from the sun they can, and that's where they're camping. I would imagine goblins can make tents, and they probably have tents to keep them out of the sun during the day. Hey, you're right. Goblins have tents to keep the sun off of them during the day. Okay, that's where they are. How many are there? The scouts say there's between 70 and 80 goblins in that camp. Oof, okay. We're outnumbered then. We're outnumbered. This is getting harder. And some of them are mounted on direwolves. That's not good. That's not good. The only way to win this is going to be by surprise. The only way to win is going to be to take them unawares. But they have pickets set out to watch for just that. And the scouts say that at each of these picket locations, there is a direwolf rider. So we've got sentries who have the ability to quickly communicate back to the camp, faster than halflings can move. We don't have any mounts, we don't have any ponies or anything like that, and even if we did, they'd never catch up to a direwolf. Okay, the sheriff has a plan. And as I'm explaining the plan, I'm about to tell them what the plan is, and my eldest shouts out exactly what I was about to say. We have to sneak up on one of these pickets, take it out, and bring our army in that way. That's precisely what we're going to do. So we need a small group who can sneak in. Halflings are good at sneaking. Big enough to overwhelm the picket, but small enough not to be detected. And they need to get into place, and they need to attack and take it out before the army can come in. Great. Well, who do you think we're going to send? Of course, I've designed this for the PCs to do. Right. They volunteer. They say, look, we've got magic weapons, we've got a lot of experience in fighting creatures like this. We can go. We will take out one of these positions. All right. Which one do you want to take out? Now, there are 3 of these positions. 2 are on the grasslands, and 1 is up in the hills. I have designed each of these 3 locations. I've mapped them out. I've rolled up how many and what kinds of troops are at each. So the players could pick any of them to go at. It doesn't matter. They choose to take the one in the hills, and here's why. The plan for the army is to attack near noon the next day, when the goblins will be at their most vulnerable. That means that that picket has to be gone before the army gets close enough to be seen. So it has to be taken out in the morning. Well, where's the sun in the morning? It's in the east. Goblins don't see well in the sun. If the party can approach from the east, they can have a better chance of surprising the goblins and taking them unawares. They can come in at the dawn, when the light is streaming in, when their vision is the worst, and they can sneak in then, and then attack mid to late morning, right? By the time they get into position, it's going to be a little later. They're going to be able to attack then, opening the door for the army. They also have this in their favor, that the rest of the Shire lies to the south and west from the goblins' position. So they're less likely to be watching from the east. To the east, there's just grasslands. There's just mountains. So they're going to be giving most of their attention to the south and west. The characters hope to exploit this. They all find places to bed down, to bivouac, as it were, in Kilskea. And the next morning, after a small breakfast, they're off. They wend their way through the hills to the southeast of where the scout says that this picket is. And by dawn, they come to where it ought to be located. And sure enough, Touchberry, creeping along under cover as only a halfling can see a hill on which there is a large pole sticking up and a black banner fluttering in the morning breeze. Now, the others are round back the other side of a hill. They've kept some geography between them and that spot, and only Touchberry has come out so far because he's the best sneaker in the open like this. He goes back and he tells them what he has seen. They have to formulate a plan now. As of yet, the sky is light, but the sun has not crested the hills to the east. So they have to wait a little while. Once that comes up and floods the top of that hill with light, that is their signal to go. So what are they going to do? They're going to approach the hill again from the east, all doing their best to keep cover, and it is a thief and 2 elves as well as a halfling, so they're not too shabby at this. They're going to approach from the east. Then Touchberry and Fleetwood are going to climb the hill, while Fofire and Bob Johnny circle around to the other side. Why? Once they're seen, the Wolf Rider is likely to take off to alert the rest of the army, and they want someone there to intercept him in case they are unable to kill him before he leaves. I was pretty impressed with that plan. But now, it's on. The sun crests the hills in the east, flooding the Picket Hill with light. You know, the Picket Hill is the tallest around. That's where you'd want to put a watchtower, right? That's where you'd want to be. Well, it's the tallest one around, and now it's just glowing orange with sunlight, right? Just flooding sunlight onto it. The party leaves their spot, comes around into the open, and begins sneaking forward, finding as much cover as they can as they go. Now, it is 2 elves and a thief in addition to a halfling, so they're not bad at this. And the goblins have a disadvantage, but still, I'm rolling. Do they see them? Do they see them, right? Now, the goblins are giving more attention, as I said, west and south, and when they do look east, oh, it hurts so bad. I don't want to look at that, okay? So they don't perceive. I roll and I roll, but they don't see him. Bob, Johnny, and Fofire go around the north side of the hill where almost no attention is being paid at all. That's the direction the goblins came from. They go around the north side of the hill, and they get themselves into a bit of a woodsy area to wait. They're waiting for the sound of battle at the top. Then they're going to come out and get into position to intercept any riders. Touchberry and Fleetwood check in with each other. They're probably about 15, 20 feet apart on the side of the hill. They check in. Go time. Up they come. The goblins scream. They see them now. One of them rushes toward that pole. And Touchberry knows, I've got to stop him. If he waves that flag, we are in trouble. But it's not the flag he's going for. Hanging from that pole is a horn. Of course, the goblins have redundancy built in. They've got a flag they can wave, they've got a horn they can blow, and meanwhile, another goblin has leaped onto the back of a wolf and is tearing down the opposite side of the hill. He's out of range, they can't stop him, it's up to Fofire and Bob Johnny now. Meanwhile, Fleetwood and Touchberry engage with the goblins on the hill. There are 3 left up here. The first one Touchberry goes for is the one who's heading for that horn, and he slams into him. Down they both go, locked in combat. Fleetwood then has the other two to deal with. He sleeps one, the other attacks him, and he takes some damage in that. They begin to fight. Touchberry very quickly overmasters his opponent. These guys are one-hit dice -1. They're not that powerful. Touchberry is a little tank. He just destroys him, right? And then he comes over to help Fleetwood with his. Meanwhile, the Wolf Rider is almost down the hill, on his way to alert the army. Bob Johnny and Foefire have circled out into position, and the Wolf Rider sees them and is going to start veering around. He doesn't want to fight them. His job is not to kill anyone. His job is just to get word to the army. So he starts to veer around. They have 2 rounds of combat before this guy is too far past them to stop him. Foefire uses this to unleash 2 arrows from her bow. One misses, one strikes the wolf. Bob Johnny, meanwhile, takes the first round to unleash a magic missile, which obviously hits, and I think it does like 5 points of damage. It was a pretty good shot. The second round he uses to move to intercept. And the wolf is running out of ground. The land slopes away very steeply to its left. It doesn't have much room to go there. So he's going to it's a race. It's like, the interception, and you're racing for the end zone, and the quarterback is going to try to cut you off, right? Well, the quarterback makes it. Just in the nick. Bob Johnny comes in, and with one huge swoop of the axe, just takes the rider entirely off the wolf. Great! Except the wolf is still running. And even a wolf without a rider is going to alert the army. So, Bob Johnny sends his second magic missile. Foefire sends another arrow, and those bring down the wolf. It collapses dead. Then they go up the hill to see if Touchberry and Fleetwood need any help. They don't. The fight is over up there. Now, they can await as the Halfling Army follows the path that they took and comes up around this hill and into the Goblin camp. They're on their way. From this point, it's math, right? It's just math. The war machine that is included in the companion book from BECMI has this calculation, and you enter all the numbers, the level of the leader, how much experience they have, how many officers, if there's any magic weapons among the troops, if any of them are mounted, if any of them have missile weapons, all that stuff. And so I plug all of that in. I don't plug it into just a sheet of paper. I don't just write it down. I actually use the lovely War Machine spreadsheet made for me by a viewer. This was sent to me by Marco, who has been watching for a long time and who created this wonderful spreadsheet which does all of the math for you, which is good because I'm bad at math. And so you can see I've plugged in the numbers for the Halfling Army, and I've come out with a battle rating of 61. The Goblins, incidentally, have the exact same battle rating. It's almost as if the DM wants this to be a close fight with just one deciding factor that will tip the scales. On to the next page, you can see the Halfling Army has some bonuses. They get a bonus for 20% of their troops at least having missile weapons. They get a bonus for some of their troops having magic weapons. This includes the PCs, but also includes NPCs. They get bonus for spells, that's the PCs, and for speed. Now that one evens out, though, as you can see with the Goblins. They also get the speed bonus. They also get the magic weapon bonus. They also get the missile bonus. They don't have any spells, but they do have a quarter of their troops on wolves, and so they get a bonus for that. What does that mean? Well, it means the rating remains tied, now at 85. On the last page are the sort of situational things. What's the morale of the troops? Well, the Halflings get 10 for that because they're defending their own land. They're in their liege lord's land. They also get a bonus because they are Halflings out in the field. That's a 20 bonus, bringing their total to 115. Meanwhile, the Goblins get a 10 for terrain, and that is because they are defending in place. And so we come to 115 versus 110, a victory for the Halflings. A narrow one, but a victory. So why do I need the PCs? See, the thing is, PC heroics can work into the math for this. You can use PC heroics as just another number you plug in. But I don't want to do that. What I decided to do was, as you hear, design the situation in such a way that the PC's heroics are instrumental for allowing the battle to succeed. So What is it that would allow the battle to succeed? That comes from the optional tactics table. And the tactics the halflings are going to employ is to envelop the enemy. And they're enveloping the enemy because they do not want a single goblin getting away. The goblins, however, are just going to attack as hard as they can in one direction. And if you look at the tactics table, that means that they gain a bonus of 10, meaning they would then have the advantage. However, there is one more factor to take into account, and that is surprise. Surprise gives a whopping 20-point bonus to the army that can achieve it. Meaning, if the player characters are successful, then the halfling army will win, even with the encircling tactic. This is the heart of why the player characters were sent to do that. It's why I set it up this way, so that they could do something that would directly benefit the army, that would directly help the cause, but without leading troops, because it's not realistic for them to be leading troops. They're too low of level, they're nowhere near experienced enough to be leading troops, and 3 of them aren't even halflings, so why would they be allowed to lead troops? So it just made sense. Give them a thing to do, some heroics to perform that would still win the day. Well, it does. It does win the day. Incidentally, the players decided that they wanted, after they've defeated that picket, they decided they wanted to go down to find a position between the main goblin army and the southernmost picket location. They wanted to find a position where they could see that and intercept anyone who headed from that picket to reinforce the army. Now, there are halfling troops heading to do just that, but they thought, in case someone slips through, we can be there as a backup. And I thought, well, you know what? That's a good idea. They want to help. I'll let them help. So, I didn't play that scenario down there, but I decided that the Wolf Rider broke free. And here he comes streaking along, right? Because at the moment when the main attack happened, the halflings blew their horns, and the goblins in the camp blew horns. Everyone knows what's going on now. Everyone knows that something's happening, right? So the picket was attacked, but the Wolf Rider got away. And there the PCs are, Johnny on the spot, Bob Johnny on the spot, actually, and they're ready to intercept. They see him coming, and they rush out, right? The rider doesn't see them at first because he's, just on his way. He's focused on where he's going. Eventually he does, and he tries to escape, but it is too late. An arrow from foe fire takes down the wolf. The goblin starts running, and a web catches him. He's held fast. He's captive. What happens in the goblin camp is not pretty. Halflings give their lives, but a lot of goblins give their lives too. In fact, there's not even a dozen left alive at the end of it. The ones who are alive are taken prisoners. This includes the ones that the players had caught. They are taken prisoner and hauled down to Athenry. In the long run, what happens to them? I don't know. But the players' involvement in the situation is over. They are welcomed, they're cheered by the army, cheered by the towns they come into. Word gets around that these outsiders have helped win the day and save the Shire, which is perhaps a little inflated, but they certainly did help. And they enjoy that, right? They go to feasts and all that kind of stuff. In fact, the reception is so warm that the players decide they're going to stay a while. They're going to visit the Shire, they're going to see the villages, they're going to eat the food, they're going to, they're just going to party for a little while, they're going to relax, right? They've had a stressful time on their way up to Hrothgar's Eyes and back. They had a stressful time with the trolls. It was no fun with the bandits and this whole thing. They just want to relax for a while, right? So they're going to stay here in the Shire for, a couple months. I mean, nothing's going to happen back home while they're gone, right?